I promised you guys in the caption of that video that I would, so this is going to be a full scene breakdown of the pastry scene. Just like last time, we'll watch a bit of the scene together and talk about it, watch some more.
Excuse me.
We were just talking about this in another video about how Hyacinth and Benedict definitely both knew. And it's the fact that Benedict is so used to Colin just like ditching him for Penelope. It's happened twice in this episode. But just more of an example of Colin being a little puppy dog. All Penelope has to do is like make eye contact and give him a little. And he's like, gotta go. Gotta go. Because remember, earlier in the episode, she straight up told him, like, we should keep our distance. I don't want people to see us together. So he has respected that. And the fact that Penelope is now initiating contact, he's excited for that. Even if it's just in, like, their normal friendship capacity, that's better than what it currently is.
Pretend to be loitering for sweets so no one suspects we're speaking together.
Cool.
And immediately those hopes are dashed. You can like see the flicker of different emotions on his face when she says that, because it's like confusion and then like disappointment and then resignation.
How are you?
I'm well. Surprisingly well. Colin Lord Devlin has shown an interest in me.
I'm disappointed with the camera shots because Luke is acting with his hands a lot, and in some shots they're just like completely out of frame, like you just can't see them, but he's definitely acting with them. So right here he's like nervously tapping his hand on the table when he's trying to think of like what to say to her. And then this one is also, he's like kind of just playing with his hands like he's nervous. So he goes with like an easy one. How are you? She says, I am well. He smiles, he starts to turn away, and then she says, I am surprisingly well. And he goes, like he whips his head back and tries even more to like get a look at her face. Like, I wanted you to be happy, but I didn't want you to be that happy.
I live that way at Stowell House.
Your lessons worked. Just feeling low. In fact, it somehow allowed me to stop caring so much about how I am perceived, and I was simply myself.
And then for her to be happy because Lord Devlin showed an interest in her, it was because of your lessons. They helped me. They made me realize that I shouldn't care about the opinions of others that much. And again, it's just twisting the blade because he's like, damn, I'm enabling her to have a better life without me. I thought that was my intention, and then it wasn't my intention, and now like I am the cause, partially the cause of my own problem. In episode 2, they have that conversation like when she's at Bridgerton House about how she knows that she's clever and funny and charming, but that gets lost between like her soul and her mouth. Colin, going into the lessons, didn't really realize that Penelope was like awkward, because she was never awkward or weird around him. She was always funny and like her best self. And he's starting to realize that like if this is the case, if she is being the person that he is with him now, then he's a goner. He has no chance, because she's now the pen that he knows and loves to others. Like, of course other people are going to be interested in her, and he thinks he has been rejected. He thinks he's been rejected. Saying that it was because of his help is just twisting the knife.
Do you feel some attachment to him?
It is early. He does seem to have a strength of character. He is not unpleasant to gaze upon.
And he's like asking more questions, but I feel like it's kind of like this morbid curiosity, even though he knows he's going to hate the answer. So he's really like, okay, how are you into him? Oh, do you like him? Do you have a connection with him? When she says it's early, but he's not unpleasant to gaze upon, the man is like... But what's interesting about like this particular set of dialogue when they start talking about Lord Devlin is that it's the one time that Colin actually kind of like avoids looking at her a little bit. When she starts talking positively about Lord Devlin, Colin is like politely kind of looking over, but he's not actually looking at her face fully like he has been at every other part. He's been trying to gauge her feelings. He wants to like look at her face, understand what's going through her mind, except when she's talking about how hot Lord Debling is. I think I zoomed into it on that video, but again, his hands are...
Thank you.
His smile that he makes as he like kind of like huffs and looks away, it's a polite smile of like, yes, but it's also like so annoyed. And he's not annoyed with Penelope, he's annoyed with Lord Debling for existing. Again, does that look like the face of a happy man? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Thank you. Do I have sugar on my face?
No. You removed it.
Wish me luck.
Good luck.
I almost feel like I don't even need to break that part down. Like, he was just so annoyed, and then when he looks back at her, he's like, oh. Again, it's been over a week. It's been even longer by this point. It was a week at the Willow Tree. It's probably been 2 by now. He's been obsessively thinking about her and that kiss, and then she just does like the most sexy little lick my finger. And Nicola is so hot. It's very much giving like, I have no idea how hot I am, because she doesn't and he does and we all do. The man really can't quite pull himself together. Like, he does, but it takes a bit longer. And if Penelope could ever like think about herself as desirable, she would have put those together easily. But then she says, wish me luck. And as much as Colin hates what's happening, he does still wish her luck, because she is still Penelope, and he does still want her happiness, even though it fucking sucks and he doesn't like it. The way that they're both looking at each other through the whole balloon like scenes, they are just staring at each other, being idiots in love. This is a great prompt for a scene breakdown. I just rewatched the scene. I think I'm gonna have to make this 2 parts, to be honest with you, because it actually covers 2 scenes and there's just not enough time for me to point out everything. So just like before, we're gonna watch some, we're gonna talk about it, we'll watch some more. And if you guys want to make requests in the comments, you totally can. Whether or not I'll do them, anybody's guess.
Good evening, Lord Remington.
Miss Featherington, it is a fine evening, is it not?
I suppose so.
Okay, so even just with that first bit, she goes over kind of casually. Another guy is there, so she starts talking to him. It's very much just like a neutral, kind of polite conversation. You can tell she's already downcast. The second that Colin sees that she's speaking with him, he is literally in the middle of laughing, and that face drops. Like, let's do a slow-mo.
It is a fine evening.
Like, please.
I heard Her Majesty is yet to choose a diamond, and it has caused some consternation with your fellow young ladies.
I do not much care for idle gossip.
Truly, you're a more resolute person than I. I love a bit of gossip. Perhaps I should not be so eager, but on days Whistledown is delivered, I sit by the door and read it as soon as it arrives.
Do you? I must admit I do quite enjoy Whistledown.
So when he brings up some of the larger gossip at hand about the queen choosing a diamond, Penelope just kind of wants to like move the conversation along. It's really of no matter, but she just doesn't want to talk about it right now. So she says, oh, I don't care for idle gossip. The moment that he says, oh, you're a more resolute person than I love a bit of gossip, Penelope gets visually uncomfortable and like closes herself off even more than she already was. Because this is ringing alarm bells in her head. People who like gossip spread gossip, and she has a piece of gossip that she doesn't want exposed. But as he continues on and brings up how much he loves Whistledown specifically, Penelope kind of lights up, sharing how much he loves it and the way that he likes to consume it, talking about it so complimentary, not even knowing that that's Penelope. This does seem to be something that they have in common. This is a person who respects my work. That's actually a pretty good thing for a suitor. I would also like to point out that the whole time they're speaking, Colin is watching them like a hawk.
Do you? I must admit I do quite enjoy Whistledown.
Did you read the passage about Lady Carter's housekeeper? That Lady Horton stole her, and that is why Lady Carter fell off tonight's guest list.
Good evening, Lord Remington.
She becomes more interested and engaged and actually takes a step forward. Colin, poor guy. He's like, oh, I already didn't like that they were talking. Why is she taking a step forward? Why is she getting closer? Like the man just can't help himself. But then as they continue and he talks about a piece of gossip that she wrote about, I find it really interesting because Colin, obviously he's jealous, but like he seems to be genuinely taken aback because not only is Penelope like getting closer to talk, she is like genuinely smiling and laughing, which is not something he's actually seen happen with anyone before besides himself. Let's do another slow-mo.
I must admit, I do.
Like Pen was herself there for a moment. And up to this point, that's only been Colin's privilege to get to know her like that. I feel like it is worth pointing out as well that this is the night of the day that Penelope went over to Bridgerton House, wherein Colin tried to set up this exact situation of her being at a lemonade stand and there's somebody there who's an eligible suitor. And let's think of what she said to him, right? Oh, just say whatever you'd like without fear of how I might take it. Oh, your eyes are so blue, but they shine even brighter when you are kind. That threw him completely off course. So imagine what's running in his head of what she's talking to Remington about what she's saying to him with such a big smile on her face. Okay, so again, face acting. We're going from jealous to taken aback to now kind of interested in what's actually going on. Because, okay, if Pen is acting like this and like can act like this in front of this person, what's the appeal here? What's going on? What about this guy makes her feel like that? But then as she turns and she makes eye contact with him, mask is on, he gives her a smile and a little cheers. Because he still can't fully admit to himself how he feels. He still isn't sure. He feels something, but he doesn't quite know what that is yet.
Lord Remington has asked to call on me tomorrow.
That is excellent. Do you like him?
I did enjoy myself. Very much.
I'm certain he did as well.
In his voice, he says, oh, that's excellent, because technically it is in the scheme of like socially what they're doing together. The question of like, do you like him almost feels conspiratorial without him realizing. I feel like what he wanted to know deep down inside was, do you like him? And if so, why? What can I do to get there? But I think the conscious reason of why he would ask her that is because Penelope seemed excited about somebody and he genuinely wants to know Penelope's thoughts and feelings.
Do you like him?
It's just never occurred to him why that would be. The dots are there. He has not put them together. I'm certain he did as well. It is so genuine because, like, again, he saw Penelope acting like the true Penelope. Obviously, this guy is going to enjoy her, right? But he is so dejected. He's like, oh, so disappointed.
I'm certain he did as well.
The man is a dummy. He's a big dummy. So I think we're going to call it there for part 1. And then part 2, we'll cover like the actual gossiping and then heading outside. But I really felt like we needed this context before that happened. This is part 2. We are doing a scene breakdown of the ball at the end of episode 2. As always, we'll watch some together. We'll talk about it. We'll watch some more. And go back to part 1 and watch for context.
It is rather unseemly that Miss Featherington took his help. Pitiable, I think.
It is kind of him, but perhaps overly so.
Pardon me, what are you whispering about?
Mr. Bridgerton, we were wondering why an eligible gentleman such as yourself would help a spinster find a husband.
Especially someone who is so beyond hope of success.
It's actually all rather sad.
So Colin had just been talking with Penelope about Lord Remington. There's kind of like an awkward silence, and then they immediately start hearing the whispers of the room. So they're looking around. They are both taking stock of the situation. Again, we talked about how good Colin is around like social settings. But while Penelope is glancing around with nervousness that then turns into embarrassment and shame, Colin begins at confusion to understanding to angry. I feel like this still sums it up perfectly. she's like, oh shit, they know. And he's like, why are these people talking about my girl? I think this might be my favorite part of the scene, but Colin, when he understands what's happening, once again, he does what he wants. He's going to shift the social situation by directly confronting them, saying, what are you whispering about? But not in a way that's like genuinely asking, in a way that is accusing. And then we got this like Dutch angle zooming in on Penelope as she realizes that, nope, they know, oh shit, I gotta do something about this, I gotta go. Or maybe rather, there's nothing I can do about this, so I gotta go.
Pen, wait.
I cannot wait to know what Lady Whistledown will write about this. It will surely be the main interest of the next edition.
So Pen is trying to make as swift of an exit as possible because she knows everybody's talking about it. Her goal is to get out of there. When Colin realizes that she's gone, he does this adorable little like spin on his heel to go, wait, Pen, wait! Running after her like a little dog. When the camera is on Penelope, you can literally see Colin in the background pushing himself through groups of people. Like, get out of my way. I have somewhere to be. Eloise hears about the gossip as well and also goes to follow Penelope. She was actually like trying to get to her, and I assume she wanted to speak to her. And I genuinely wonder what she would have said had she reached her. Also, Eloise doesn't see that Colin is already going after her.
Eloise, did you tell anyone of my helping Penelope?
No, I did not mean...
Which means you did.
I confided in Cressida.
Because you thought you could trust her. Why you were friends with Cressida in place of Penelope, I will never understand. What could Penelope possibly have done to warrant such maltreatment?
Now, just like Eloise, I wish we would have known what Colin was going to say to Penelope as he reached her. But by this point, by the time he gets outside, his rage has just been growing and growing. Anger at everybody else is at the forefront of his mind just as much as his concern for Penelope. But I think anger is the more obvious emotion than concern. It's the more physical emotion. When he sees that Eloise is also going after her, he turns that anger towards her. Because yes, while he's angry at the people in the ball talking about it, spreading it, being so unkind to her, Eloise is the reason that they're talking about it at all. Colin is sure of this because that is the only person that he's told. I honestly think this scene might be the angriest we've seen Colin so far. Obviously, Colin has such a hero complex. His whole drive is he feels the need to take care of the people that he cares about. And it's actually interesting because Colin is mad at Eloise for essentially the exact same thing that he hates Whistledown for, which is spreading information and bringing public shame and scrutiny on the people that he cares about.
Which means you did.
I confided in Cressida.
Because you thought you could trust her. Why you were friends with Cressida in place of Penelope, I will never understand. What could Penelope possibly have done to warrant such maltreatment?
Like, that man is genuinely angry. How dare your actions put somebody that I love, that I don't realize that I love, into danger? And then I think this is another, anger does run in families. Anthony gets pretty angry. We haven't seen Benedict get angry. We're seeing Colin get angry. So, of course, Eloise she's been angry for a while, but in a more, kind of feminist way. She's angry on principle, not on specific actions, besides Penelope exposing her. So when Colin puts this wrath onto her, she is just ready to pass it off onto the next person because, well, I didn't do it, Cressida did, and I'm going to confront her about it because it's her fault that this is happening. I feel like between the three of them, they've all taken turns feeling like the person on the outside. The friendship really started between Eloise and Penelope before expanding with the rest of the family. So Colin was the first one on the outside. And then at the end of season 2, it's really Penelope who's on the outside, between what Colin says about her at the ball as well as Eloise casting her out. But the fact that Colin is now taking Penelope's side, chasing after her, means that this is the first time Eloise is on the outside, other than the times that she's put herself on the outside of her own accord. I agree with the original commenter who requested this scene that this really is a turning point for all three of them in their journeys. It's going to force Eloise to confront her own actions and the harm that she has caused to others, despite always thinking that she's the innocent. Like, maybe she can't go through life thinking the entire world revolves around her and her experiences. It's Penelope reaching her low point of feeling the most undesired and truly alone that she has ever felt, realizing that she might be alone forever. She doesn't have her best friend. She doesn't have now her other best friend, which is what allows her to be so brave in asking Colin something very vulnerable and taboo. Penelope has always trusted Colin, but it's not until this point where she truly feels like there's nothing to lose for being as vulnerable as she can be, which spurs her to ask for the kiss, which spurs Colin to realize, oh shit, I'm in love with Penelope. And again, I would like to say Penelope did not beg for the kiss, okay? That is actually the most sexually liberated thing that any woman has done in this series. No one else has asked for what they wanted except women who are either not a part of the Ton or Benedict's current girlfriend who's like older and has already been married. She's not asking for her crush to kiss her. She's asking her best friend to do her a favor, to give her an experience that she thinks will otherwise be unavailable to her the rest of her life. And that is a really, really brave thing to do. Yes, this is a great point too. And I think it just really reinforces the cyclic kind of nature and actions between the three of them. One thing that I actually do really like about Bridgerton, I really appreciate how seriously they take like honestly everything, but specifically the complicated, complex female characters that we get to have. I think Penelope in the show is way more dimensional than Penelope in the books. I feel like a lot of people really loved Eloise when the first show came out, like the first season, and I feel like in seasons 2 and 3 everybody has completely turned on her as like, yeah, well, she's always been a bad friend, she's always been terrible, and like, yeah, but so has everybody else at one point or another. I don't think that Eloise is a bad friend. I think she makes really bad choices that most of them have to do with the fact that she is just privileged and sheltered. She doesn't understand the reality and the circumstances of people outside of herself. The fact that she's so resolute on becoming a spinster is something that just straight up is not an option for many of the other women in the show. Her worst fear is being controlled by the man that she marries. Meanwhile, Penelope's worst fear is literally living in squander. And honestly, same thing with Cressida. Cressida kind of has like a flipped character arc as Eloise, wherein she obviously started as this big bully that we all hated. But this season, they're making her more dimensional. We're getting a backstory. We're understanding the motivation behind her actions more. Penelope, Eloise, Cressida, they all do terrible things, but they're all motivated by different things. Penelope starts writing Whistledown as a way to claim power in a society where she is powerless. And the mistakes that she makes along the way are kind of always done with good intentions. Like, Colin is her friend. She exposes Marina, not because she wanted to expose Marina, but because she has exhausted every other option and still wants to save her friend. And the same thing with Eloise, with the queen thinking that Eloise is Whistledown. Penelope writes terrible gossip about her, which happens to be true, as a way to save her from the wrath of the queen, knowing that her family can withstand the wrath of the Ton. Like, another scandal will come along and it'll overshadow it because the Bridgertons are so privileged in their wealth. No matter what kind of scandal Eloise or any of the other siblings bring on themselves, people still are going to want to marry them because of their wealth. Cressida, on the other hand, we realize that she's a bully because she is the victim of a bully at home. She's another person with limited options and, similar to Penelope, worries about a life in squander because her dad is already financially abusive. It's not that Eloise is trying to be a bad friend, it's that she's so unaware of her own privilege and so unaware that that's not the reality for others. And in fact, Colin kind of falls into that same boat. Every time, like, Penelope kind of puts herself down, he's like, don't do that, you're Penelope Featherington. You're eligible, like, you're all of these things. And, like, yes, he truly believes that, for reasons. But that's actually not her reality, and he's privileged enough to not have to think about others in terms of wealth, whereas Penelope is very aware of her standing within the social and financial rank. These things aren't something that the Bridgertons need to consider because they're already protected by them. I've been watching a lot of cast interviews. Something that I am really pleased to hear is that it seems like the Pen Eloise is going to be stretched over even into season 4. And I think that's for the better because Eloise really needs to like go through that journey. She needs to be broken out of this bubble because I don't think Eloise is a bad person. I actually really enjoy her character. She makes thoughtless mistakes, but she 100% has the potential for redemption, just like Cressida has already, and her journey has only just begun.
They really did put I Thought You Knew on a shirt, and I would love to talk about the merch that's being released for the summer program, but this is the standout, and I see why. But this doesn't surprise me because I feel like they love to set Conrad up with his merch because that's what his stands like. Like, they put I Thought You Knew on this shirt because his stands love that. I've come to understand that it's romantic, angsty, and exciting to Conrad stands when he flings Belly around emotionally, offers her no emotional support, makes Jeremiah sit through a song and a dance, a performance about his chest pains, about how his chest physically hurts to not be able to tell her that I'm in love with her, only to decidedly never tell that girl he loved her, insults, degrades, and ghosts her with no communication, and then when he is confronted about it, he has the audacity to say, I thought you knew. But that's not surprising to me because look at what they've been putting on the merch for years. This is the Conrad stands bread and butter. Like, this has always been all over the merch, and this line, so no, he didn't give me flowers or candy, he gave me the moon and the stars, infinity, is from the book, and it is another scene that just sets up Conrad perfectly as a really bad, low effort love interest. This has always been really something to me that they're giggling, blushing, kicking their feet over this one, and always have been, because this scene in the book is literally Conrad showing up empty-handed to Belly on Valentine's Day. In the books, during their situationship, Conrad shows up to Belly on Valentine's Day with no notice. Like, he doesn't acknowledge her all day, he never asks her to be his girlfriend, he never tells her that he loves her. He shows up empty-handed, no flowers, no candy, no gift, just a box of Twinkies and some lukewarm cocoa that he could have picked up at the Wawa, nothing else. And he doesn't take her on a date or anything, he takes her to her front lawn and tells her to look up at the sky. And Belly romanticizes that and says, so no, he didn't give me flowers or candy, he gave me the moon and the stars, infinity, when really your rich situationship showed up empty-handed on Valentine's Day, took you to your front lawn and told you to look up. So I thought you knew on a shirt doesn't surprise me. I know they love that. I know they're eating this up. I don't think this merch is like super cool or impressive to me. I do like the Jeremiah, you don't need to hurt yourself to get my attention, because I think, you know, if they were gonna put like I thought you knew, we needed like a strong Jeremiah line, and maybe like a controversial one, because I know the anti-Jeremiahs love to like drag him for that, but you know who ate it up besides us? Belly ate up you don't need to hurt yourself to get my attention. I don't know why you guys are surprised that we get Wattpad lines in a brother love triangle that's literally copy and paste Twilight. There's nothing more Wattpad than that, and at least Belly eats it up when Jeremiah does it instead of what else do I get? What will you give me if I do? Like, please. Also, it's Madison. Her middle name is Madison. Stephen and Conrad, kings of the bare minimum, but I can't even say that because they only do the bare minimum occasionally. This is 100% your look, Connie baby. I know everybody loves that line because the sound is viral, but okay, like, fine. This is not really the moment to me. This is just kind of boring. I feel like we could do better than this. Like, I feel like this is stuff that you could find anywhere and it doesn't really have any actual connection to the summer program or Cousins Beach. It's like, okay. These are like not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I definitely feel like we could do better. It's like not really the moment like that, although I will say the images on the jelly shirt are really cute. These I personally don't really think are the moment either. This might be somebody's cup of tea, but it's not mine. I'm personally over the Eras Tour inspired merch. I just feel like we could do something better. I don't know. It's not the worst. This is probably the best of the merch they've released recently. I do like the Daisy stuff. That is really cute. I know some people are really into this infinity thing. I'm not, but like this is definitely the cutest of the merch, but I do feel like last year there was just like cooler stuff. I know that like the show was releasing last year, so that's a different story, but I really like the American Eagle stuff. Skylar actually sent me last year these fragrances and they smell so good. I use them all the time. They're so cute. I have these wax melts from Etsy. The Jeremiah one smells like pear shampoo. It's so cute. Like I do feel like there just is like cuter stuff on Etsy, and I love merch. Like I love all the Daisy stuff. I just wish that like it could be like a little cuter and more thoughtful, but that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, if anybody wants to send me a gift, you know, the I Thought You Knew shirt is on my way. I have to say I appreciate this comment because my man Jeremiah has been on trial and fighting the most obscene, outlandish allegations for the infamous fireworks scene in season 1 for years now, and you didn't go with the Jeremiah is an attempted unaliver or something absurd like that, but you said your argument is that the fireworks scene kind of proves that Jeremiah knew there was stuff going on between Belly and Conrad, and despite that still went after Belly. And I did want to talk about this point specifically and why I disagree with it, or I don't really think it's fair. And maybe for the 4th of July I'll finally do my in-depth analysis on the fireworks scene, because I've actually come to be of the opinion that it is a really good scene, and I think it really demonstrates how a lot of the symbolism in the show is like intentionally crafted to be ambiguous, and I think it's really interesting and well done. So if you still want to see that, I will probably still do that. But on this point specifically, Jeremiah definitely meddled a little bit before he made a move on Belly, before he confessed his feelings to her, right? But I feel like takes like these just remove Belly's agency and reduce her to an object that Jeremiah stole from Conrad, when Belly is not Conrad's property. At this point, you could argue that he maybe knows that there's something going on because he sees them almost kiss, but Belly and Conrad are not together. Actually, they were both literally seeing other people, and I thought you were all really against cheaters. Conrad was seeing Nicole, stringing Nicole along, and Belly was seeing Cam Cameron. Clearly, they don't have a relationship. There was nothing to sabotage with Belly and Conrad here. Belly and Conrad didn't get together because Conrad didn't give her the time of day until, interestingly, he specifically asked Steven, who is Jeremiah hooking up these days? And when he hears that he might be hooking up with Belly, despite claiming he had no idea, then he whips out the phone, and then he texts Belly, and then when he sees her get into the car with Jeremiah, he sends her a literal "you up" text that night after gaslighting her about their almost kiss. He literally gaslit her about it and only tried to make a move after he learned that she might be hooking up with Jeremiah and saw that she probably was. So I also feel like this take is just hypocritical. Personally, I don't think that witnessing a maybe almost kiss while both parties are seeing other people means that Jeremiah can't make a move. That's just not fair. Like, she doesn't belong to Conrad. Jeremiah waited until Belly was single, until he knew that she was not with Cam Cameron anymore, and then he shot his shot and scored. He was very forthright and direct with his feelings, and Belly was very open, receptive, and enthusiastic about it. What was Conrad doing until he got called out? Oh, that's right, he was stringing Nicole along until he got called out. So I just don't agree that Jeremiah isn't allowed to confess his feelings to Belly or shoot his shot or make a move on her because he witnesses like what might be an almost kiss. Like, they're not together. She is not Conrad's property. And meanwhile, even if you want to argue that Conrad had no idea that Belly and Jeremiah were hooking up when he kissed Belly on the beach after that, he didn't care once he found out. I personally think it's a little silly to say that he didn't know before this, but even if you want to say that, after that, he didn't care about Jeremiah's feelings at all. It was Belly who cared. And then he went to Jeremiah, steamrolled him into giving him his blessing, and literally lied to Belly about it, talking about how he was on a high and going on dates and over it. Made Jeremiah sit through a song and a dance about his chest pains and how it physically hurts not to be able to tell Belly that he's in love with her, because apparently it was Jeremiah who was stopping him from doing that, only to decidedly never tell that girl he loved her. And so personally, I really don't care that maybe Conrad and Belly might have been hooking up, even though they were both seeing other people. And Jeremiah confessed his feelings to Belly when she was literally single. Like, I don't care. She doesn't belong to Conrad. If this is okay, I don't see what Jeremiah did wrong. But then again, this comes from the same people who think it's totally okay, cool, and acceptable that this man went to his little brother's fiance 2 days before the wedding and said, pick me, choose me, to his brother's fiance, not you specifically. But yeah, Belly doesn't belong to Conrad. That's basically my opinion on it. Like, they were not together. Yes, Jeremiah meddled a little bit to see things and to find things out, but she was not seeing Conrad, and Conrad was not throwing her a bone until Jeremiah did. And I also just think it's a little hypocritical coming from the same group that supports all this man's scheming or just pretends it didn't happen. Belly's not an object, and I don't understand why Jeremiah has to wait around for Conrad to do something when he literally wasn't going to do anything about it, and Jeremiah did. So he shot his shot and scored, and Belly was cool with it, and that's my... July 4th, some years ago, Jeremiah Fisher lit a firework into the sky, effectively interrupting an almost kiss between Conrad Fisher and Isabel Conklin, set to False God by Taylor Swift. Said firework sparked a million takes and angry torrents about how Jeremiah is a psychological manipulator, violent aggressor, attempted unaliver, narcissist. It's become the foundation for many deep dives about how Jeremiah is at least wrong for Belly and a danger to her and society at large, and why we should be afraid of him, aware of his red flags, and if we don't see it that way, we're obviously watching the show incorrectly or just stupid. Now, it may surprise you to know that I am actually a big fan of the fireworks scene and the 4th of July episode as a whole. I wasn't at first. Because number one, the entire episode is almost exclusively show original content. None of it is taken from the books, yet people like to use it to support points that only exist in the books. And because the firework doesn't exist in the books, I was like, now why would they do that? Because I knew my man was going to be fighting the most obscene, outlandish allegations, and he is. But Conrad Collective, this is for you too. My point is that this scene, the fireworks, the whole episode is really a demonstration, a very good demonstration in how the symbolism, motifs, themes, imagery, the soundtrack of the show is intentionally crafted to be ambiguous and presented in such a way that both sides of the love triangle, because that's what it is, may interpret it in the way that suits their narrative best. Believe it or not, not every little detail in the show is crafted to show you that Belly and Conrad are infinite and meant to be, and Jeremiah is a psychological manipulator and sneaky, but so that there are sides, so that there are teams, so that there are different perspectives, so that there is debate. If a good portion of readers and watchers are not rooting for Jeremiah, then the series has not achieved its intended purpose. I'm gonna dissect this firework. I'm gonna be this guy for a second because it is layered, and I'm gonna give you both sides, even though I hate to give Bonrad's ideas. Let's start with Laurel. Prior to the firework, Belly has a conversation where she asks her mother if she's ever felt fireworks for somebody, because she says that she doesn't think she feels fireworks with Cam Cameron. Laurel goes on to describe 3 different types of love, where she says she felt fireworks for somebody once, but it was never going to work out because the fire would have burned them both alive. She says with Belly's dad, she felt steady, like a cozy campfire that would keep her warm all through the night. And she says, you'll know when you want to be with that person no matter what. Now, I don't necessarily think that this means this is a one-to-one comparison about Belly's love life. Also, I don't really know how we ended up with love her, but emotionally withholding divorcee Laurel as the authority. If I was a Bonrad, I might say that Belly is chasing fireworks and she goes out to see Conrad because Conrad gives her fireworks, right? Now, if I wanted to say that Conrad was the person who she wants to be with no matter what, I couldn't really say that he was like a good mix, because while we have seen like unstable and fiery with Belly and Conrad, we haven't really seen smooth, steady, supportive. But you could definitely say that Belly was chasing fireworks, so she went out to see Conrad. But is that necessarily good based on the conversation she had with Laurel? But what happens is she talks to Conrad and he gets called out about the necklace and says that he was embarrassed. And then while they are both literally seeing other people, that is just the truth. Conrad is stringing along Nicole and Belly is seeing Cam Cameron. They almost kiss, and then Jeremiah interrupts it with a firework. If I was a Bonrad, I could definitely say that this was a petty and jealous and impulsive move from Jeremiah. I would also probably point out that the firework Jeremiah lights is green, symbolizing envy and jealousy. And if I really wanted to push the Bonrad agenda, I could even say Jeremiah interrupting them and distracting Belly is representative of Jeremiah's role in the story as a whole. He's a distraction until Belly is ready for Conrad, or until Conrad's ready for her, and that's what Jeremiah represents. I could say that, but for people who are so into symbolism, can we ignore who has been so heavily associated and clearly associated with fireworks this entire episode? Because it's not Conrad, it's Jeremiah. Jeremiah spends this whole episode talking about his fireworks, and nobody really pays attention to them. He's upset that his dad isn't coming, so he won't see his fireworks. Susanna cares about Jeremiah's fireworks, but she ultimately gets distracted by other things. Stephen indulges in Jeremiah's fireworks for a minute, but he can't really be bothered because he wants relationship advice, and then he F's off to go see Shayla. Adam yeses Jeremiah and says he cares about his fireworks when he brings them up, but then ultimately he leaves, and directly following this, Jeremiah goes outside with the fireworks already in his hand to express his fireworks by himself, feeling that everybody has dismissed them. And in this case, fireworks, is told by Jeremiah, I believe are representative of feelings. Everybody dismisses Jeremiah's fireworks, and then he impulsively makes sure that they are seen in this moment. It's green, it's intense, it's passionate, and it definitely makes an impression on Belly. It changes the story. If we're going to talk about symbolism, how could we ignore that Jeremiah literally gives Belly fireworks? Could we describe Jeremiah's love as safe and steady because she doesn't feel like it's precarious? Yes. But is it also described as real and scary? Yes. Then let's talk about the song, because Bonrads love this. They love that it's False God, and they claim that's for Conrad. Do you think that reflects well on Belly and Conrad? Segsy, yes, but she worships a false god, and specifically they say the road gets hard and you get lost when you're led by blind faith. But then the same people love to talk about how Susanna painting Jeremiah as Hermes means so much and means that he's like devious and the divine trickster. So Jeremiah is Hermes, and we can get into that Greek god Jeremiah, and I could see Jeremiah as Hermes in certain ways. Not necessarily a bad thing, and apparently according to the Conrad Collective it is. But then what about false god? If false god is for Conrad, what god is Conrad then? A false god? Is that a good thing, or is false god for Jeremiah? In that case, you admit that the song was for Jeremiah, or you admit that the Belly and Conrad scenes are about Jeremiah, and you spent the whole Belly and Conrad almost kiss talking about Jeremiah. Why does this Greek god symbolism mean something but false god means nothing? saying in reference to Conrad. What god is Conrad? Maybe Conrad's Apollo because Hermes steals from it. Because Belly is a Barbie doll that Jeremiah stole from Conrad. Maybe Conrad is Apollo because apparently Conrad is the sun, even though Jeremiah is sunshine and Conrad is literally a doom cloud. Or maybe Conrad, like Edward Cullen before him, is Hades because they do have a little bit of a pomegranate motif. Point is, for every Conrad and Belly are infinite and Jeremiah's a psychological manipulator take, there is another one that opposes it that could be supported just as well, if not better. And I do think that's intentional. I think that's part of what makes the series so enjoyable and so great and why we all talk about it. But for me, I will say, well, I love all this stuff and I love analyzing things. I love Jeremiah because of his actual actions, and I love their relationship based on that, like in what they actually do and how they are together and things that they actually do, and not just symbols telling me that the stars point their way. Anyway, you all still do way too much with this firework and I feel like you're just never gonna let it go, but I do actually find it really funny now. That one and the bad breath allegation, favorite. I love you guys, I really do. It's really been a year since season 2 of the Silly Summer program dropped. I'm honestly in disbelief. God bless that perfect season of television, and as much as I'm kind of glad that season 3 is not out right now, or like I was saying that I was glad about it because I didn't want to hear like the Bonrad propaganda and I enjoy this jelly honeymoon that we're having, I kind of am sad now that it's not premiering right now because I miss it. I could say so much about it, but the point is I wanted to ask a controversial question. Do you find this shirt distracting, or did you ever find this shirt distracting? I know some people are going to hate me for this because some people already do hate me for this, but when I first saw this shirt, like when the trailer first dropped, I didn't like this shirt and I thought it was like so weird and distracting, and I've heard that this is a lot of people's favorite shirt. Now I don't feel that way because so many amazing things happened in this shirt. Like, how could I not love it? And it was never in a way that like I thought it looked bad. It was just that it was distracting, and that he was wearing the shirt for like 3 episodes. Like, he needed to change the shirt. And then I realized that everybody was kind of wearing the same clothes for a few episodes. Like, as What Would Eli Pope Do said, it was like cartoon character status. So I don't know why I specifically focused on him wearing that shirt for what seemed like a really long time. And I do think it was because I just found the shirt distracting, but then I think I inadvertently like started like Jeremiah doesn't shower allegations, and I didn't mean it like that, like he looked dirty or like he like needed to take a shower. That's not what I meant. And he already has the doesn't brush his teeth allegation, so we don't need that. That's not what I meant. It's not like Edward Cullen not changing his clothes for 6 months. That's not what I meant. But anyway, my favorite Jeremiah outfit was this one, and this is actually my favorite Belly outfit too. And honestly, I miss them so much. Like, I forgot for a very short amount of time how much I miss them, and I really do miss them, and I miss you guys, and I miss like having to fight the narcissistic, aggressive, manipulative border collie with bad breath who doesn't brush his teeth allegations every week. Like, honestly, I miss it, and I miss when the first 3 episodes dropped and the entire scene and how much I loved it, and how people were making like 20-part videos about how Jeremiah is a narcissist and dangerous, and how like none of that applies to Conrad because he gets a pass for everything. And I just like, I really do miss it. I miss it, you know. And this was such a perfect season of television. Like, God bless it, honestly, because it was perfect, and I really do miss it.
I don't know how people are feeling about season 4 of The Boys, but I am not loving it. And I just watched the newest episode, Dirty Business, and there's so much that I don't like about it, but I also think that it just kind of perfectly encapsulates issues that I've had with the show since day one. The Boys has always had an intensely ravenous fan base, so I always get a ton of pushback when I have even moderate critiques, and I honestly think that's in large part due to the fact that the show has always prioritized shock value and vulgarity and excessive violence and gore. Like, it always feels like the show is trying to gross you out first and then tell a story second. And to be clear, I don't agree with the commentary that this show is like more overtly political this season, or it's like jump to the shark. I think it's always been this way. I think that the story structure is just slightly more all over the place and messy, and kind of feels like they're trying to drag out the story a little bit. It's not really for me about the fact that it's more overtly political. The show has always been incredibly political and had the most on the nose messaging, and it's just incredibly blatant, very shallow messaging, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. I think there's lots of media, particularly like parody media, that like the whole point is to very specifically parody one thing. Dr. Strangelove is a great example of this, where it's done well. And The Boys has always been really entertaining. The cast is great. The performances are really good. I've always found that, especially in previous seasons, like the plot and pacing and mystery and conflicts are very engaging, despite my moderate critiques. But I have never been the kind of person that can overlook the irony of like the entire big bad of this show being a super conglomerate corporation called VOD, and meanwhile the show is produced and distributed by Amazon. I feel like a lot of the messaging that they're trying to play there is severely undercut by that. It is also just really funny that conservatives are hating this season so much because like the general politics of the show are just incredibly middle of the road. They are incredibly centrist, incredibly moderate. The overall consensus, like the general messaging of this show is something that is so widely agreed upon, and it's that, you know, major corporations and billionaires are bad people who have secret societies and pull the strings behind the scenes. Like whether you have conservatives talking about the Illuminati or leftists talking about this America being an oligarchy, that is an idea that a lot of people on both sides of the aisle agree on. Like they are not reinventing the wheel here. They're not calling for revolution. They are literally pandering to a very agreed upon concept in this country. But now I'm going to get into some spoilers, so if you're not caught up, you might want to skip it. This recent episode had a lot of controversial stuff in it, namely the SA subplot. And I take issue with the way this show illustrates sexuality in general, because it's intensely conservative in the fact that this show like explicitly links like sexual acts, especially taboo sexual acts, with like being evil. Like sexual deviancy as depiction of the bad guys is a very clear connection in this show. Every single time the good guys have to infiltrate an enemy base or whatever, it's like, well, the enemies are having their annual orgy party, or they find a bad guy like performing some kind of like explicit sex act on himself or someone else or something. Like it's very, very clear, and it's weird to me that the messaging of the show seems to be like very sex negative. And again, that seems to be because the primary goal of The Boys is to show people the grossest, most extreme, most disgusting thing they could put on screen so that people will talk about it. And I mean, that's a winning marketing strategy, I guess. It's worked so far, but you lose me in terms of maintaining an interesting series for 4 fucking seasons when that becomes such a huge drive in telling the story. Which again brings us to Huey's essay in the recent episode, which again, I'm not necessarily opposed to depictions of SA in media because I think that when done intentionally, they can be really meaningful and important. But this show's history of prioritizing shock value and putting characters through really traumatic things just to seemingly up the ante, it doesn't feel like it's for anything productive. They put Huey through the ringer this season, and again, I don't like utilizing these things as a means to an end. I don't know. I found Ryan's story really interesting this season. He's what I've really been watching for. I'm curious to see what happens. I actually find Firecracker much more interesting than I thought. There's a lot of interesting things happening. I just don't think it's being executed super gracefully. So I guess we'll see. I don't know. In the wake of recent events, I think this movie deserves some critical reassessment. I loved this movie when I saw it at South by Southwest, and I have a couple videos on this page of my analysis and thoughts of it. When I first saw it, I interpreted it more as a broad strokes criticism of American foreign policy and American violence recontextualized to illustrate it in a more relatable way to the kinds of Americans who are most removed from it. However, in retrospect, I think I might have been giving too much credit to the current state of politics in this country, because I think it's potentially a lot more relevant in a literal sense than even I considered at the time. And frankly, I think a conversation about the ethics of political journalism is long overdue and could not be more important than it is right at this exact moment. This photo in particular is a big reason why I want to have this conversation. I find this photo incredibly disturbing because, yeah, it's technically a great photo. It captures an important moment in American history, and it's probably going to win the Pulitzer Prize, but it's also incredibly effective propaganda. And even in the rare instances where journalists are truly independent and are not working for huge media conglomerates with agendas, I think personal glory often outweighs the very real impact that their work can have, because journalists are creating a narrative. At the very least, they are presenting the ones that they think will be profitable, and the huge focus on Donald Trump in 2016 from the media is a big reason why his campaign gained so much legitimacy to begin with. So I think these conversations are kind of vitally important now more than ever. If you had asked me even last month if I thought there was any realistic possibility of a second American Civil War breaking out anytime soon, I probably would have laughed or shrugged. And I'm still very hopeful and not trying to fearmonger that something like this, if at all possible, is still a long way off. Like, a lot of things would have to happen. But the increasing amount of politicians using words like there won't be violence as long as the Democrats don't force them to be, and the recent Republican National Convention where crowds of people were chanting fight, 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 I don't fucking know anymore, dude. So I want to read a little of an essay I started writing earlier this year about this film because I think it's even more relevant now than it was then. So It's strange to see the sudden and immediate online impulse to pearl-clutch about the sanctity of the ethics of journalism in response to this film. In the wake of multiple recent high-profile cases of biased pieces appearing in some of the largest and most respected pillars of journalism, the New York Times, The Atlantic, and The New Yorker have all in recent weeks published opinion pieces that operate as little more than thinly veiled propaganda. Openly anti-trans think pieces, outright lies published in the wake of October 7th that have never been corrected or redacted. We've all seen the clips of the local reporters all speaking in sync, reading the script that Madoff Inc. filtered through every network in the country. And the very concept of an opinion piece is exactly because journalism is supposed to be non-partial. The morality in journalism shouldn't come from reporting the news with an opinion attached. Therein lies the very real threat of media-sponsored propaganda, but rather what a journalist chooses to cover. This film doesn't posit that these characters are actually trying to be impartial. It definitely doesn't insinuate that they don't care. The very act of choosing to be a war photographer and endangering your own life every day to continue despite the real danger and personal trauma is a political stance. Journalists work to uncover information they think is vital for the public to know because of their beliefs and morals. They don't presume to tell their audience how to feel about the information. That is the point. I find it strange that journalists find this idea repulsive all of a sudden. Choosing that profession of a war photographer is taking a political stance. It's an inherently political pursuit. Furthermore, as to Garland's comments on the irreverent framing of these journalists, these people are deeply flawed. They're not gods or morally unquestionable heroes. They're people doing their best and facing unbelievable trauma every day. Yes, the man in his 40s sits on the 23-year-old. Yes, it's creepy and opportunistic, just like a lot of the characters' actions. Yes, some of the journalists are thrill seekers. Some seem to be more motivated by personal glory than anything else, and that doesn't make their pursuit any less worthy. This is, after all, a commentary of America. It's built into the very foundation of our society to succeed. Best of the best, prove your value. Kirsten Dunst's Lee and Kaylee Spenny's Jesse are the embodiment of this dichotomy. Lee has spent her lifetime full of regret for the things she's witnessed in pursuit of greatness, and yes, also the pursuit of bringing meaningful change to the world. It's hubris that puts us into many situations like this, and venerating characters shouldn't mean making them saints beyond moral reproach. We can go back and forth on whether the very concept of a truly selfless act is even possible, but I think we can save ourselves a lot of time and heartache by just skipping ahead and accepting that much of our desire to do good comes from our desire to be good and be seen as good. That's never been more true now than when much of youth culture revolves around performing morality publicly to an ever-shifting construct of virtue. Do doctors and war journalists have God complexes and unhealthy coping mechanisms to the unfathomable trauma they take on? I think the more important question is it even possible to take that path without a God complex? And how does that reflect in the still important work they do? I think this is the very question Garland is asking. Much has been made of the inclusion of the work of Andy Ngo, widely known as a grifter who capitalizes on the suffering of marginalized, war-torn peoples for his own gain. The same people criticizing the use of his footage, a valid objection I might add, are insisting that this film is too unfavorable in its depiction of the noble and unquestionable role of a journalist. It's frustratingly paradoxical, like much of the widespread populist criticism of this film. Now don't get me wrong, there are many valid critiques to be made of this film, just like any other. I completely understand the argument that this film brutalizes people of color, and the effectiveness of this imagery is absolutely debatable, but as someone who has been openly critical of Garland's past of seemingly inadvertently colorblind casting that has resulted in reinforcing some very negative racial stereotypes and tropes in his past work, I actually think this was a very conscious decision to comment on the unbalanced nature of the way violence is distributed at the hands of the American war machine, both at home and abroad. It is people of color who suffer under the systems of oppression this country is built on. It is people of color who are always being made to suffer in America's white supremacist farce of a meritocracy. I can't fathom how people insist this film has nothing to say or could possibly be apolitical when it situates mostly white journalists in a position to separate themselves and self-aggrandize while they watch their POC colleagues and fellow countrymen suffer and die, all while profiting off it. It feels like the inverse of the frequent criticism of The Handmaid's Tale that contextualizes the current and ongoing suffering of women of color as a cautionary tale for white women. That's all I'll read for now, but I wanted to make this video because when I first saw this film, even though I loved it, I interpreted its meaning and messaging as far less literal, and in recent weeks, it's feeling more and more like a desperate plea to stop what, I don't know, might be inevitable. I also think it's really important to note that this film is absolutely unambiguous about who is inciting the violence and to what end. It absolutely takes a side. It absolutely has a very strong and clear political stance. And I think in a world where fascism is on the rise globally, and here in America especially, and where satire is frequently misunderstood, I think being on the nose is kind of fine. Anyway, if you can tell, this movie's been on my mind a lot the past couple of days for reasons, so we are definitely living in the worst timeline. So Twisters rules, and it's about fucking time that we got a great disaster movie in theaters again. If you were a kid who grew up on 90s disaster movies, I am pleased to report that this is an excellent time at the movies. I never doubted Lee Isaac Chung because I love Minari, but I know there was a lot of skepticism about this movie because people were like, will it live up to the beauty, to the glory of the original Twister? And I can't speak to whether it like holds a candle to the original because the original is sugar-coated in nostalgia. I love it. I was raised on it, but it was not super critically well received at the time, and it is like a cheesy 90s disaster movie. But that is, the spirit of that is captured here. First of all, if you're a romance girly or a romance lover of any gender, this movie is romantic as hell. Yes, Glenn Powell is possibly the most charismatic man on planet Earth, but like it's also just a really well written, like slow burn, like kind of like romance. I was kind of giggling and kicking my feet the whole time, I am not gonna lie. But also this movie just absolutely delivers on being exactly what you want from a big blockbuster action disaster movie. Like this feels like a big we're so back moment in a very serious way. Like this feels like a perfect first date movie. And not only that, it makes me nostalgic for a time when like movie dates seem to be more of a thing. Do people still go on movie dates? It feels like I don't feel like that's as much of a thing anymore. I don't know, I'm someone who never really bought into the whole we don't have any movie stars anymore argument because I always assumed that it was more of like a combination of social and cultural factors as opposed to like not having actual people with that insane magnetic energy. But Glenn Powell is making a very strong case for the magnetism argument, the movie star magnetism, because this man is a fucking star. But also the supporting cast in this movie is just an eclectic crew of fun little weirdos, and I miss seeing that in movies. Brandon Pereira is delightful. He's so charming and wonderful in this movie. I just wish there was more of him. Katie O'Brien, the entire crew of like the Tornado Wranglers are just so much fun. David Cornsweet, who is our future Superman, is like the obnoxious prick in this movie, and he is fantastic in that role. I just genuinely had the best time watching it. I think it's fun. I think it's fun as hell. And yes, I did intentionally position myself so that I am the tornado and Glenn Powell is looking right at me right now. Hey.
In theory, this is a really amazing idea, like Cressida finding out Penelope's Lady Whistledown and going, you can help me. I need your help. Help me. But Cressida Cowper is never going to do that for two reasons. One, she was raised to hate women. So having Penelope be more successful than her means that Cressida even more strongly believes that she needs to like blackmail her to get Penelope to even try and help her. Two, Cressida has always truly, from the very first second of the first episode, believed that Penelope is of lower class than she is, that Penelope is worse than she is. If one of them's gonna succeed in life, Cressida has always believed that Cressida will be the one to succeed in life and Penelope will fail miserably while Cressida laughs. And the number one way we can see that, and the number one reason that we can see that, is when Eloise tries to get Cressida to be nicer to Penelope. Cressida goes, well, you're right, I guess I was kind of punching down because Penelope is so much worse than us. She's so much less than us. Like, she's not how good. We're so good and cool and perfect, and Penelope's just like, bleh, loser, bleh, the worst. So, like, it makes sense that I could probably be a little nicer to her since she'll never amount to anything. So being proven not only wrong, but so deeply wrong that Cressida had to tell Penelope that she was blackmailing her. Cressida even then had to make Penelope feel like a bad, gross, dumb person for it, which is why she went to Penelope's mom and was like, Penelope's Lady Whistledown, think of all the times Penelope's been pathetic and terrible, and that the people who have been mean to her friends have like succeeded while the rest have not, and then tell me how you didn't think before that Penelope could be Lady Whistledown. What a pathetic little bitch. And it's like, Cressida was never going to go to Penelope for help. Cressida doesn't know how to ask for help, but Cressida would never go to someone like Penelope Featherington for help. She would go to Eloise, but Eloise wasn't listening to her, so Cressida just went, blackmail, thanks, bye. Like, that's just it. Cressida has not reached the points in her story where she will be able to do anything other than try to attack people and bite the hand that feeds her. She needs a solid 3 more seasons before she can grow to the type of person who can ask for help. I love it. Actually, I love the way that this storyline is going. I think it's fantastic. I think that they're doing a really good job with showing someone who needs help but can't ask for it. That Cressida isn't smart, it's that Cressida isn't Lady Whistledown smart. Cressida has quite a bit of intelligence, obviously she does, and everything that she like handles, she does it. And a smart way, but Cressida is blunt. She has a blunt edge to her that, like, Lady Whistledown doesn't. Lady Whistledown puts innuendos in there. Lady Whistledown references Aristotle and, like, would probably reference, like, sports games, too. Lady Whistledown is Renaissance smart, okay? To be a Renaissance man, you have to, like, be good at math and... Damn it, did I already run out of this glue stick? Okay. Is to be good at math and to be good at English and writing and drawing and all of these other things, to be like the fully formed human being. Lady Whistledown is a jack of all trades and a master of none, except for being a master of writing. Of course, Cressida Cowper is a master of one, and that's being snarky and bitchy, and she does it well, and she's very smart about it. I'm not saying that she's not intelligent. I'm saying that she does not have the same intelligence as Penelope, which is why people are like, you are not Whistledown. You could not possibly be Whistledown. You wouldn't be able to keep this secret, and the voice would be so different, which is why we see Cressida, which is why we even see Cressida write a Lady Whistledown article, and it becomes this completely different thing with this completely different voice, and she isn't paying attention to the rest of society and the ton because she's always been stuck in her own little world. So instead of coming up with these smart things that you can say about other people that are actually true and have actually happened and can be proven even if you're just like paying the slightest bit of attention, instead of that, we have Cressida going for the blood, going for the throat of the Bridgertons in a way that doesn't even make sense because none of it's provable, let alone true. Yeah, okay, bye!